What's going on, folks? Toys and Tech of the Trade, your one-stop shop for toys, tech, and talk, is brand new for your consumption this week. I'm your host, Rich, and if this is your first time checking out an episode, first of all, welcome. Second of all, a bit about what we do here. Toys and Tech of the Trade is an interview series where we sit down with content creators, entrepreneurs, and just kick-ass folks on our radar and discuss the gadgets and gear that they use to create their content, run their business, and just make their lives a little bit easier. When it comes to toys, we like to use a broad description here, not just action figures, Funko Pops, the usual stuff, but other things that are considered toys in some capacity, you know, cars, trucks, knives, things of that nature. Our definition of toys here is a little broad, so sometimes we like to just say toys in quotes. All right, now that we've brought you up to speed on what we do here, a little bit of housekeeping before we jump into this week's guest. First off, I'd like to thank those of you that have bared with us as we transition our RageWorks.net site and build out the RageWorks Podcast Network site. That's been something that's taken a little longer than we would have liked for a couple of different reasons, and because obviously I'm a one-man show with certain things on the back end. You know, it definitely kind of affected certain things, the release schedule of this podcast being one of them, obviously, having the time to book guests and everything else has just been it was a little tough to manage. So now that we kind of took some time, got the site running, you know, I want to say at least 90% optimally, even 95. There's still little tweaks and things that I can make on the fly as the site is live. Overall, though, you know, the move to the site for all of our shows is probably one of the things I genuinely should have done a long time ago, just because it allows people to just go one-stop shop, pop in, get whatever shows they want, check out some new ones, look around the site, look for archives and things of that nature. Not that that couldn't be done on RageWorks.net, but it's also tied into some of the other stuff on the site, and it just made things a little too busy. In my opinion. In addition to that, I also wanted to add that we, moving over, especially with more emphasis on, sports shows, wrestling, etc., we were losing that connection between our written content and our video content, everything else, and our shows. There was no cross promotion, or very minimal, just because our coverage has changed. RageWorks is no longer covering MMA or wrestling. We moved away from that for a bunch of reasons, which I can always discuss in another episode if you guys are curious, but that's not what you guys are here for. Nonetheless, I want to thank those of you that reached out, gave me feedback, little pointers, little tips and tricks to just make it a better experience for you guys. And as always, the RageWorks Podcast Network is for all of you, the listener and the viewer. And if you guys have any feedback, please feel free to reach out via social or via email. And, definitely would love to hear your thoughts if there's anything that jumps out that we can do better. As you've seen, if you've been on the site, we have all of our existing shows, moved over some of our older My Take Radio archives, just because that stuff needs to have a home, even though it exists on iTunes, etc., but it needs a website home as well. Some of our other spin-offs also are being moved over, plus there's some podcast launches on the horizon and maybe some new shows on deck as well. So, little teasers for you guys. Nonetheless, we have a regular broadcast schedule going forward, which is bi-weekly every other Wednesday. And everything else is all systems go. So unless something changes, you will see a new episode. This episode is being released on Wednesday, so 2 weeks from this Wednesday, you will be checking out another brand new episode of Toys and Tech of the Trade. All right, that wraps up the housekeeping for this episode. Let's switch gears and jump right into this week's guest. My guest on this week's Toys and Tech of the Trade is a good friend and a colleague who's actually we became acquainted through, of all things, a podcast group. This individual has his hands in regular radio, but now jumped into podcasting head first, has been killing it with his Basketball Drives with Mike Bisceglia podcast. So without further ado, let's learn about the Toys and Tech of the Trade of Mike Bisceglia. Mike, what's going on, buddy?
Hey, not too much. Thank you so much for having me on the podcast. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, I'm very, I've been looking forward to having this conversation with you just because we've been talking about podcasting off air over, the last few months. And the concept for your show is crazy because it's basically Uber Eats. It's like Tales from the Road, so to speak,
Right.
mixed in with a nice healthy dose of sports talk, a lot of it being basketball related. And first off, I want to get into the origin story of why did you start that of all things and why that concept?
Well, it's funny. So I'll take it back about like 10 years or so. I lived in Charlottesville, Virginia, and I was in local radio there. Charlottesville is where the University of Virginia is. A lot of it was sports talk for UVA. And I met my best friend in my whole life, Leon Oliver there. And him and I were in local radio. We didn't make much money, but we had a blast. We had a lot of fun. And we started talking a lot, and we did a podcast. And it was called Outside the Box with Mike and Leon. And we did this like 12 years ago now. And I still get like irritated at myself that we didn't keep going. But that was the first podcast I did. And fast forward now, I'm in New York. I'm a producer for CBS Sports Radio. And during this lag time, I always wanted to do another podcast. But I didn't want to do something forced. I didn't want to do something that I didn't feel was original to me. And just to do a podcast, to do one, I didn't want to do that. I've always had a love for podcasts. I've listened to them, and I respect everybody that does one. I think it's awesome. I love listening to them. I love listening to my commute, my drive, but I didn't know what my voice was. So fast forward again, and I guess this is about now 3 or 4 months ago. With my hours as a morning show producer, which I am for CBS Sports Radio, Taz and the Moose in the mornings on CBS, I really had the whole day free. And I wanted to make a little extra income, and I wanted to have something I could do in the afternoons and in the evenings with that time. And I didn't want to have a job that was set with hours, because just with my other full-time job, I wanted to make sure I was flexible in case something came up. And my wife had the idea, why don't you become an Uber driver? Couldn't do the Uber because my car actually has too many miles on it. So we looked into some of this Uber. Yeah, exactly. So the car is not safe enough for people apparently, but burritos is fine. So she said, let's look into this the food delivery service. So there was one other food delivery service we looked into. I actually couldn't get on it because it was they had too many drivers. The name's escaping me which one it was, but did the process, got on Uber Eats, and away we went. Started doing it for a couple of weeks, and I thought to myself, I am seeing some really interesting stuff. And I was like, wow, I would love to tell the stories of what I'm seeing on these drives. I think that would make for a fascinating listen. And then I'll sprinkle in some of my basketball talk, which that way I have a voice with the hoops. And then the name Basketball Drives came together. And I'll say this about the Uber thing. I wasn't sure about it. I love it. I really love doing it. And now with the podcast connected with it, it's like a double whammy. So I get excited when I go out on a trip because you never know what story is going to happen.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think that's one of the most interesting parts, and the beauty of it is that you share the good and the bad, warts and all. So for somebody that's looking, number one, to get into that type of a side hustle, it's good because it kind of gives them an inside peek at what's going on. And if they happen to be a sports fan, hell, it's a 1-2 punch for them.
Yeah, exactly. So I can't say like the reception from people and everybody connecting with me, saying how much they enjoy it. From like my wife's aunt retexted me, like, I'm listening to your podcast, and I like other family members, just people I haven't heard from in college years ago, reaching out to me. The love has been tremendous, and it scratched the itch for me that I sort of miss being a producer. I don't talk as much on air, so it's been nice to have a voice about something that I really care about, and that I also think is definitely unique.
Now, going to that aspect of you being a producer, what got you into the radio business? Like, was that something that you gravitated towards in high school, or was it something that you kind of just got thrust into because maybe you did an internship or something, and all of a sudden, boom, the bug hit you?
I grew up in New Jersey, and I became the biggest basketball fan. And my dad and I were like, well, we can't get tickets to see the Knicks because they're sold out and too expensive, but we live about 10 minutes from this place called the Brendan Byrne Arena where the Nets play. They're terrible, but we could go see their games. It's a lot easier to go see the other great players. So let's go check out this basketball. Let's go check out the Nets. And I fell in love with them. There was a player named Drazen Petrovic, who unfortunately tragically passed away in a car accident, but he got me so into the Nets that I became obsessed with them. And I remember my dad and I actually ended up going to an NBA All-Star game that was in Orlando.
Wow.
We went to two. We went to the Orlando one, and I remember there was something you could do where you could. They had it set up at one of like the All-Star festivities where they would give you one of the greatest plays in NBA history, and you would sit there and they'd mic you up with the headphones, and you would pretend to be the broadcaster, and you would recreate the call that happened. And I remember doing that. I was like, oh my God, this is so much fun. And from that, I kind of got the itch to do play-by-play. It then sort of morphed into sports talk radio as I listened growing up as a kid on WFAN. And from there, I said, I want to get involved in sports talk. It's a way to not really having a job. You talk about sports, and away from there. And that's sort of what created the buzz.
Now, what was your first production job? What'd you end up doing first? What was the first thing you did in production?
So after I graduated, I went to Syracuse. And after I graduated Syracuse University, I tried my best to do like on-air TV jobs actually at the time. So try to be like a sports anchor in different towns. So we actually, crazy enough, had a fill-in professor one day. And he's like, I know how tough it is to find jobs. I know it's impossible. I know you can't really do it. I know it seems like it's a daunting task, but here's an idea. Drive across the country with your resume tape. So instead of just sending out tapes and not connecting with people, set up appointments where you go to different locations. So my cousin and I, after I graduated college, I drove up and down the coast basically. That's a little bit too far, but we went up and down a little bit and dropped off my resume tapes in Tennessee and, in Georgia and in Virginia. And I mentioned before Charlottesville.
Right.
One of the places that we ended up going to was Charlottesville, Virginia, and I fell in love with the area. And I didn't get a job there or anything, but it just so happens one of my best friends growing up, he was actually going to move to Charlottesville because he wanted to be with his girlfriend who was in her senior year of college, and he was going to find a job there. And I said, you know what? I'm going to tag along with you. I don't really have a job yet. I don't have a job in radio, but you know what? I don't want to be at my house kind of just idling around, getting in my parents' way. Let me find a job in that area, and I'll look for other jobs at the same time. So I found a job at a place called Mincer's, which is like the UVA in the little town where you can buy like sweatshirts and hoodies and hats and all like overpriced merchandise that you have to have for your family that you're like, how is this hoodie $65? But
yep.
I ended up working there. And then I lived with my friend. And during this whole time, I just kept pestering and bugging the local radio station that was there. And eventually, over time, a job opened up where I got to answer the phone calls for the local morning show. So
Nice.
My first job in radio, after pestering the local station, WINA 1070 AM, they gave me a job where I call screened for the local morning show there in Charlottesville.
That's fantastic. And then from there, I guess you just learned the ins and outs, right? Now, you consciously went to school not for radio broadcasting, right? You were going to school to try and get sports anchor job, correct? Yeah.
So, when you go in there, I knew I wanted to do sports talk, but the way that the school worked in a lot of ways was you had a lot of opportunity to do TV anchoring. So a lot of what I did almost fell into that lap, and I didn't have as much radio experience at the time. But I knew, once I graduated college and I was looking for a job at that point, it didn't matter if it was TV, radio. I just wanted to make sure that I could find myself getting into the medium or into the media, and from there, just let my hard work and everything take its place from that way. But I'm glad it went the radio route because I think it's a lot more fun and it was meant to be. But yeah, at that point, I was like, whoever will take me, I'll take a job. And lucky enough, the radio station.
Nice. And now, as you were learning working the switchboard, obviously it's your first time working a switchboard on a radio station. What was the learning curve? And I'm assuming you became a sponge and started learning every other aspect, right?
Yeah, it's a fun question because I can remember having like really bad anxiety over learning like the board. So you look at it and it looks like you're running a spaceship. I'm like, how am I going to learn how to run this audio board? And then slowly it's like, you can take all the notes you want. You can be prepared as you want, reading everything over, but you have to do it just like anything else. And then I started to do it and I was like, kind of really digging this. This is really fun. And then I fell in love with running the audio board and running the board. I like salivate over it and crave doing it. It was so much fun. I enjoyed like fading in and out, playing drops, turning the people's mics on and off. So I got used to it and I learned it, but I can tell you right away when I first saw that, I was like, I'm never going to be able to learn how to do this. I was terrified.
And the funny thing with stuff like that is, especially with the rise of podcasting, it's I respect what you do more so because the traditional route, you went that route because it's a source of employment. Plus you wanted anything. If you enjoy what you do, it's never work, so
right.
So
exactly.
Again, you have my utmost respect with that, because when I learned and countless other people are learning, it's like you got to learn how to be audio producer, promoter. You got to learn how to talk behind the microphone, technique. It's insane.
Yeah, you definitely do. And I think for me, I know going to Charlottesville, which was market 184, they made you do everything. And you had to learn how to run a board, learn how to screen calls, learn how to set up a remote on location, learn how to edit audio, learn how to talk on the air. I mean, you had to do everything. And what was great about it was it wasn't as much of a high pressure situation. So you could really learn on the job. And I am so grateful for that experience to just get my hands into everything that I could. I do feel grateful for that. And I do think that it helped me ultimately get better at my craft, because you had to do everything. I mean, it was from taking the cars and going to the car wash. And then at the same day, you're on air doing a sports report. So it didn't matter. I thought that was kind of cool.
Yeah, I think that cross training is important, and it's the old 10,000 hour rule. If you do it enough, you become proficient at it. And I think that for you and for many other people that are looking to get in that space, I think that it's tough, because a lot of people, they'll say, oh, I could just start a podcast and get discovered, and it's like, yeah, but that doesn't always necessarily work,
No, that's a great point. Yeah, no, and then for me, when I've started this podcast, I have all this training as being a producer for a national morning show. So I know I don't have to, as far as the in and outs of putting it together and making the podcast sound as proficient and professional as it can, I've got so many skills and ideas, so that crossover definitely helps.
Yeah, I'm sure that's one of those things where, it's a little bit of the you're not a rookie in the game.
No, definitely not. Cause like if I want to edit out my sound, I just edit out my sound. I don't have to go to anybody for help. I want to smooth out what I thought I don't know if I like that I said that. Maybe I should get rid of that. I don't know if that really worked. I can make all the changes. And with the podcast now, I'm starting to add like sound elements on the road when I talk to people. So I kind of have a plan in my head. I'm producing it and voicing it. And it's like my brain is kind of firing on all cylinders with that.
Do you structure out your podcast in advance? Do you storyboard or anything like that? Or do you just go off the cuff with a kind of like an idea, a loose blueprint?
Yeah, it's a good question. So what I do is I take everything that happened from the week and I jot down all the notes. And then from there, I create an outline. So I'll see everything that happened and I'll structure in my head how I want the podcast to go. So I'll take my notes that happened from the day, everything that I want to incorporate in the podcast, and then I have a structured outline. And once that outline is created, then I go ahead and record the podcast. But my fear is if I don't jot down my notes, then I'll forget something that happened, because my memory is not good enough just to be like, all right, I'm just going to talk. I need to have notes down to make sure that I get everything across that I want to talk about.
And what are you taking your notes on your phone, or are you just writing in a notepad? Or
yes, so I use the notes section of my iPhone. I'll use that. So if something happens on a delivery, I'll just go into the notes section that I've created and I'll type in, all right, guy came out only in his underwear when I dropped off the burger. I definitely want to talk about that experience. Dog came and jumped and almost bit my head off. I want to talk about that. Make sure to jot that down. Oh, I just had a thought about this story from my days when I was a big basketball fan. And after a game, I followed a player home one time. True story, stuff like that.
Gotcha. So then your outline, you structure that. How do you end up doing that? Are you doing that on the computer, creating an outline, or you just have an outline written out and then you kind of just populate as you go?
So I actually have a notebook that I keep. I like writing this down, and I turn every page, like episode 1, episode 2. I have a notebook down that's my outline, and I just write everything in there. And I like having, I don't know what it is, but like for my national show, I produce a rundown every morning. It's all typed out. It's on paper. We print it because I'm handing it out to multiple people. So that's what I'm used to. But for whatever reason, I really enjoy writing down my notes in a notebook for this podcast. It's kind of therapeutic. I like it.
And one thing that's, and some people might do this, and I'd be curious to know where you stand on it. Are those notebooks, do you intend as you fill them to keep them as like hey, these were my notes from this episode, or do you just feel like once it's in the can, it's out the door?
No, exactly. I like that. I plan on keeping these kind of like a journal of all the notes, so I can be like, oh my God, there was episode 1, there was episode 4. I'm a big fan of notebooks in that sense. Like for my radio show also, I keep a notebook of all the guests that I've booked. So I can go back and be like, on October 3rd, 2017, we had this guest on the show. And I think it's important just to keep those logs of everything. And I like the idea of like when I'm actually doing my podcast too, if there's something I wanted to reference from another podcast, I can just flip the page, go back and look at it. And it's fun to keep all these journals. My wife gets annoyed by it, but I have all this crap now piled up, but I just can't help myself.
Now, going into the gear aspect, I want to talk a little bit about, how you set up your show and structure it. So obviously you take your notes and you outline. Now, what are you doing? Do you just have a mic set up at home, or do you record, anything into your phone and then use that audio? How do you structure that portion out?
So that's a good question. And there's a couple of components that go into it. I'll start with the bigger one. As far as just voicing my podcast, what I do is I actually do my podcast in my car. And what I'll do is I'll drive to a certain location that's been one of the bigger Uber Eats drop-offs of the week. So I'll drive out to, let's say, Nutley, New Jersey, and I'll park outside of the Nutley Diner or anywhere around it where I can park. And I'll record my podcast in my car. It's my wife's 2007 Toyota RAV4. I bring my laptop into the car. I then have a microphone that I plug into the laptop. I record into Audacity, and I just go from there. And I do the podcast in the car. As far as some of the other elements, I'll do an interview, and sometimes that interview I haven't done in my car yet, which I'd like to do, but it's been tough to coordinate that. But I'll talk to people in the radio station. I'll interview them there live. I'll sometimes call people from the radio station and just set everything up into the audio boards there. And then from that, I'll take those elements. I'll edit that later in post-production. Some of the other sound I reference, like I'll be on the road. And for example, in this previous episode, there was somebody, he was joking around. This kid started saying, you stole a fry of mine. You stole a fry of mine from McDonald's. So I said, you know what? I want to interview right now. So I take out my iPhone. We went back and forth, interviewed him as he accused me of stealing a French fry. Take that audio again, save it to my iPhone, and then put it back in post-production. So in the car for the main parts of it where I'm doing the podcast, interview is typically through a computer and an audio board. And then some of the other fun audio clips that come in, people are emailing me, sending me, or I'll randomly find somebody on the street and we'll just talk.
That's pretty crazy. Now what you're using just a regular like Windows laptop, or are you going MacBook?
I'm using just a regular Windows computer. It's a Dell, and just straight into that. Nothing fancy, no bells and whistles, but it does the job. And Audacity has been good so far. Knock on wood. Record right into the laptop, save it, and edit from there. But nothing too nuts. And all funny too. Like all this stuff is all my wife. Like the car is my wife's old car, hand me down to me. Laptop, my wife's laptop, hand me down to me. But the microphone I did by myself.
What mic did you end up getting?
So I ended up getting, it's just a lav mic Insignia, and I just clip it onto my shirt. I had first started using a microphone that I had before, and I was holding it in the car. But the problem was, like, when you're doing a podcast that long and I'm sitting in my car, I mean, my arm was getting so tired. I was like, I can't do this anymore. This is ridiculous. So I was like, let me get a hands-free mic, clip it to my shirt, and then there's nothing else to worry about. I can be more hands free and not, have these like huge raging biceps from doing my podcast.
That's I like the approach. And now when you're going home and doing post-production, are you still using Audacity for your post-production workflow too?
I am, yes. So I'm just doing everything through Audacity, post-production, and just taking all the elements. I'll email them to myself, put them on the laptop, and then mix them down, add sound. And, it's takes a couple of hours, but if you're organized and you have everything together, put it all down, mix it down, and that's a really nice feeling when it's all done. What's
the biggest hurdle you've had doing the podcast this way? What's one of the biggest challenges you've had?
Ooh, that's a good question. I would say for me, it's the time, and then and to myself getting too overly critical of everything, and probably needing to take the approach of you don't have to smooth everything out. It's okay if something's not perfect. And I find myself sometimes listening like, oh, I said a couple times there. I should get rid of it. And then in retrospect, I have to learn that's not that important. It's the content that is, because I might end up being there for a long, long amount of time that I don't need to be. And I think that has something I still need to improve on, or else it could go on forever.
Yeah, well, I'm actually glad you said that. One thing I learned over time, and somebody told me this, was paralysis analysis, where you're being so critical about every aspect that you end up just doing nothing because you're spending all your time being critical of it. So it's funny you say that, because I get caught up in that too, and I can empathize greatly. I mean, especially being from New York, I'll try to cut out the you know what I'm saying, because that's a New York staple. And I'm sure funny. being around Taz and those guys doing radio, you hear that one often, the ums too. And the funny thing about it is that I remember I went through a phase much like you where I edited every out, and it sounded so robotic that I was just like, yeah, maybe not. So sometimes I leave it in there for a little more of a natural sound, because I think at the end of the day, to reinforce the point you drove home, it's about the content, man. As long as the content is good and you're engaging, people look past some of those crutches. I mean, as long as your audio is crisp, it ends up being that the crutches become part of the show. If you don't do it, I think people would be upset.
Yeah, right. No, exactly. It's so true, because I'll just be sitting on my couch and I'm like going through all this stuff, and I sometimes go, Mike, you have to stop this. You're going to be here forever. Like, it's okay. The fade was okay. Nobody listening is going to be like, oh man, you faded that too fast. I'm done with this podcast. Nobody cares. And I just have to reinforce that to myself.
Yeah, it's so tough. And I based on what you're saying, your wife is very supportive of this endeavor, right? That's very cool. Nothing helps like having a supportive partner, especially for this stuff, man, because you get trapped in your own head.
Yeah. No, she's been amazing. And she is I've never met somebody that listens to podcasts more than her. So her support to me has been great. She's almost become like my associate producer. She has some ideas, some concepts, and she's helped me make this podcast. Besides even supporting me, which has been awesome, just come up with ideas. And I'm like, that's a really good idea. I like that. Let's add that into the podcast, because she's listened to so many of her own and so many successful podcasts. She's like, you know what, this guy does this, and then I'll say, oh, it's a great idea. Let me do my version of that, or my idea of that, and bouncing ideas off of her has been tremendous. And again, like you said too, yeah, she's been super supportive of it, and has been helpful in so many ways. Like I really could not have done this without her. To sound cheesy and cliche, but it's true.
No, I mean, listen, doing this as long as I have, my wife, who was my fiance, who was my girlfriend at the time, it's like, a lot of times that bed is empty because I'm editing at 2 a.m., and that's what happens. And having that, it helps. It's incredibly helpful, especially if you're trying to turn this from a passion project into your day to day. See, in your case, it's good because you have that opportunity to leverage your creative outlet in your real job, but you also get to flex the muscles a little bit, for this project. So which is like you said, it keeps you active, especially during that downtime.
Yeah, it's funny too, because it's like, even though it's a lot of work going on throughout the day, like the days went from long because I get up at 3 a.m. for work, so I'm going to be tired regardless. But now they're, really long, but in a weird way, it's made everything else easier. Even though you would think like, oh, I'm doing more work, it's going to make my job harder. In a weird sense, it's made it easier because I have to be so focused and so organized and so ready because I need to make sure that I can get my second half of the day going. In this weird full circle way, it's made me better at my full-time job.
So you start the full-time job at 3. Then what do you figure you wrap at 12 noon, give or take?
Yeah, so I wrap up between 11 and 12, just depending on the day. And then what I do is once I'm done with my job, I get in my car. I work in Lower Manhattan, and what I'll do is I'll go across the Holland Tunnel. And once I get back to my exit 150, that takes you to Montclair, Bloomfield, or Nutley, turn on the Uber Eats app and I go from there and see where the day takes us. Typically go between 1:45 and 3, just depending on how busy the lunch is. Come home, take a little nap, try to go to the gym, and then do like the food service at night at Uber Eats from like 5 to 7, 5 to 8. Then I do a nightly email for the show that has all the information for the show for the next day, and do it again.
Wow. So your day is definitely a long day. Now with you doing Uber Eats, obviously it's been good for just, supplementing your income and keeping you active. Mm-hmm. Now, has that made it to the point where your Uber Eats income is something where it's like, well, damn, if I did this 3 days out of the week, I could cover a whole second salary? Like, are you at that stage, you feel, or is it just good to have that extra pocket money to play around with?
It's good to have that extra money. Now I'm definitely hustling and I'm doing a lot of hours, but if I could do it full time, but it would be a lot of deliveries. So for me right now, it's kind of just made everything easier in life. Like for example, bills come up, tickets come up, and it's just nice to be like, I can go out and earn $65 today and wipe that right away. Yep. So it just made everything a little bit easier and taking some of the stress off of the everyday crap and life and bills that go on. Honestly, I'd love to, if the podcast just exploded or whatever, it just made like the podcast and Uber Eats a full-time job. I think that'd be super cool and exciting. But right now for me, it's just a nice way to make some extra money and keep my mind active as well. So I've enjoyed all of that.
Well, and especially because the way you're structuring it, it's almost like you're doing the two prime shifts anyway. So even if you went and did the lunch rush for, like you said, from 1 to 4, and then you did the dinner rush from 5 to 8, in total, you're basically maybe 5-6 hours combined, which isn't bad, especially if you're knocking that out and you're doing this full time 5 days a week, right?
Yeah, so I'm doing this. I used to do it one day more, but now Mondays become my editing day for the podcast. So I was at first doing Uber Eats on Monday and editing the podcast, and I was like, and doing a national show. And I was like,
geez,
this is too much. And I said to myself, now I'm kind of taken away from my podcast. I'm like really tired. So Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, I'll do the runs. Saturday I take off, and then Sunday again I will re-explore it. And I haven't done a Sunday yet since football season has started. I shouldn't say that. I've done Sunday morning. I haven't done a Sunday since football season started because I wanted to keep an eye on that for my job. But I'm going to start exploring Sundays during football season because I think in my area in New Jersey,
it's a lot of
so
money.
Many Giants and Jets fans that it could be an explosive day in terms of making revenue and money. And I think there could be good stories from it too.
And on top of that, if the Sunday is good, then you can scale out another weekday because exactly that Sunday money is guaranteed.
Yeah, Sunday money is good because it's pre-football. Say with Sunday, people are ordering breakfast, lunch, dinner at all different times. You might have somebody that's at 9 o'clock getting some breakfast, at 2 o'clock getting some breakfast.
Yep.
At 2 o'clock is getting a big Sunday dinner for the whole family. So the rules don't exist as far as times to order. Unlike during the week where I really know between 2:30 and 5-ish, it's kind of a dead period for Uber Eats. But once you get on a Sunday, the rules go out the window, and that's great.
And I think that's if that works out for you, especially with Sundays, you have a probability of bumping into more people that are just going to give you more unique stories because, you know, you have a couple of guys, they have their friends over at the house for a game. You never know who's going to answer the door.
You don't. No, I've actually, like, one of my favorite stories was I delivered some cookies to a gentleman, and it was going to a hotel, and he ordered 6 cookies, and I was like, who is ordering? I guess this guy wants like a late night snack or a late early evening snack. I was like, whatever. So I get there, and I ended up realizing that it was during the training camp time for the Giants. It was a Giants team hotel.
Oh, man.
So I ended up delivering to a New York Giant, and he got the cookies, and I walk away, and he comes running back down the hall to get me. So the restaurant screwed up the order. They gave him the wrong cookies, and he was so upset about it, and everything went haywire. So a few days later, I reached out to the New York Giants. They invited me to training camp. I went over to training camp, and I interviewed him on the field and brought him the right cookie order. So
that's phenomenal.
That was kind of funny.
That and the thing about that, which you know, some people listening may not get the ancillary benefit of that. That player's going to remember that interaction because he's going to remember, hey man, you know, this guy did the right thing and helped me out. People don't understand that little interactions like that, especially in this business, go a long way.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that for sure. And when I went over to see him, he came over to me because PR staff had informed him, hey, this is the guy coming. He's like, I've been in the NFL for 9 seasons. This is the weirdest interview I've ever done in my life. I was like, I bet. So that was kind of cool.
Plus, it also carries over to your regular job because you could talk about being at Giants training camp.
Yeah, exactly. No, the crossover effect was tremendous. So yeah, it was definitely a stranger one, but a lot of fun. But yeah, for sure.
What's been the most awkward part of the side gig? Like, what's one situation that you're like, wow, I can't believe this actually happened? Or
yeah, you know, the weirdest one was like just that people sometimes have no fear in caring about stuff. And like I mentioned this earlier on with you, was I delivered a burger to this guy, and he came out just in his little underwear,
right?
And he was like fully exposed in my face, and like I was trying trying not to focus and just like get the food out of the bag. That at the same time, this dog came out of his house and just jumped on me and like scared the crap out of me.
Oh, geez.
And I remember going like, "Oh, are you scared of animals?" I just, "No, I'm not scared of animals," but I was so laser focused on making sure I wasn't staring at you that this dog like scared me to no ends. And just that, and a side note to that is that maybe kind of different is that you'll order food and people will forget they ordered.
Oh my God.
I can't get over that. Like they're like, oh, I totally forgot about this. I've had this happen like not once, probably like 5 or 6 times. And I'm saying to myself, if I order food, like my life is tracking when that order is coming.
Hell yeah.
It is shocking to me that someone would be like, I forgot I ordered. I can't understand that.
That's so trippy to hear that. And I think that's just because it's, you know why? Because you probably still call your local like Chinese restaurant and order food, and you do that. You know, for anybody who just presses a button on an app and just enters it and keeps it moving. I think it's just you lose that connection of that interaction. So you forget that it happens. I mean, that's just a theory on my part, but I kind of feel that way because think about it. When you call it your delivery joint, your pizza joint, and they'll be like, hey, blah, 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 this is Al or whoever. And you know them because you go there. You'll be like, hey, Al, it's blah, blah, blah. I'm here and I need this.
I know. It's a very true, very good point. You know, you're interacting with the people. You're keeping track of things. Now there's a phone that says, you know, it reminds you, hey, person is 8 minutes away. It's like, it really is a weird concept if you think about it. Like I'm going onto my phone, I'm touching a couple of keypads, and the next thing I know, I have lo mein in my house. It's wild.
And on top of that, and you can correct me if I'm wrong with this, the way that it works is people can essentially order from any place that service is available. So if somebody wakes up and they say they want Thai food at 10 a.m. and there's a Thai place open, that's what they're ordering, right?
Yeah, they can do anything. So it's opened up different avenues to different places. They can go anywhere they want. And for me, like as the Uber driver, I've actually ended up, I like have relationships now with people at the restaurants, like the managers and the people at the desk. Like you build these like weird friendships because sometimes you're waiting for food and you start talking to people.
Yep.
that's another like unintended consequences. I now have connections at my local restaurants where one guy was like, hey, because we became kind of friends. It's actually a Thai restaurant, ironically enough. He goes, hey, bring your wife in on a Saturday. Let me take care of you. I'm like, okay.
That's like, what's up.
Cool.
Now, do you
I
also
never thought
get
that would happen? But all right, it was like, all right. I know the owners of the restaurant now. Nice.
that doesn't hurt. I mean, do you get also ancillary content from just the people at the restaurant? Like sometimes, you're chopping it up with the manager. You find out he's a football fan or a basketball fan. Does that happen too? Is that an extra perk of the job?
Yeah, it is. Like it was episode 6. I remember it well. It was called The Stolen Chicken. And I went to a restaurant I live in Bloomfield, New Jersey, but Montclair, New Jersey is like super close. So that's where I do the bulk of my deliveries, or that's where I start my day because there's high population of restaurants and a good chance I'm going to get some orders. And there's a restaurant there. I went into the restaurant and there were 3 delivery drivers, including myself. So there's actually 3 guys that all had to wait a little bit because they were kind of backed up. Picked up my order, left, dropped it off, and then came back and got an order to go back to the same restaurant, which is kind of strange to do back-to-back like that, especially for a spot I don't go to that much. It was a little strange, but I was like, hey, it's business. I'm happy about it. I go in there, and the guy says, you're actually doing one of the orders from before. The guy took the food and never delivered it, just left with it.
What the hell?
He never dropped off the food. Yeah, so he stole this person's order, and he never came back. So the next day, I was like, this is really fascinating. So I went back to the restaurant, and I interviewed the man that was working at the restaurant that time, and we did a full back and forth on what exactly happened. So took his sound, put it in the podcast, and now he's become actually he subscribes to my podcast and loves it, and he's got kind of like become my friend at this restaurant, and I see him all the time, and he's been on the podcast. I've talked to him, I talked to him about the stolen chicken. So that's to answer your question. Yes, that happens.
Now, do you sometimes how do people feel in terms of just anonymity or getting themselves out there? Do they ask you like to not share their name? Do they do any of that, or are they just so comfortable with it just because it's audio that it doesn't matter?
Yeah, that's a good question. So for this example, he did not want to be on video, and I said, hey, don't worry about it. This is strictly just a podcast. But I didn't say his name. I didn't say the restaurant's name. I just set up the story of what happened.
Right.
I said, hey, I'm in a restaurant in Montclair. There's over 100 restaurants. So he felt good about that. But it's one of those things where you just kind of have to sense everybody's vibe. Like you'll know, and so far so good. But I'll know, like, okay, this guy doesn't want to play. All right, this guy's kind of having fun. He seems into it. And you just kind of have to recognize. And when I do drop offs too, sometimes I'll be like, hey, I think I could. If something interesting happened in a delivery, I'll get the idea. Should I talk to him? Should I not? So you just kind of have to feel it out and get a sense of the person.
Okay. I ask because, every place has its weird idiosyncrasies with stuff, and especially you dealing with a lot of the mainstream sports too. You got to deal with the PR wall and the gatekeeper and don't talk about this and don't touch on this. So I got to ask, because being out front like that, especially with this side gig and the amount of people you have to interact with on a weekly basis, there's got to be some people like, oh, I don't want my name used, or I don't want the restaurant's name. Sometimes it works that way.
Yeah, no, you do. And I haven't run into it yet where somebody has said, hey, don't use something or don't do something. So I've been fortunate with that. So far, so good. And if I go on my podcast and I talk about a story from a restaurant that I think went south or went sour, I'll never reference the restaurant's name. I've not done that once. If it's a positive order and I'm friends with the guy, I'll say, like, I'll plug him out on social media and give positive publicity, but I have not yet. If something has happened in a restaurant, I won't mention its name. I don't want to do that. I don't think that's fair from my end. I think the stories are interesting, but I don't want to put them in bad light if it's just a one-time circumstance. And people shouldn't judge their restaurant based on just one thing that I saw that may have been.
Yeah, I usually, whenever I go out to eat, all joking aside, I do the 3-strike rule. It's like, all right, something might happen the first time, whatever, off day. Second time, maybe the off day. By the third time, like, all right, if it's the same experience or something close, I'm like, I can't do it.
Right. No, I mean, especially too, like, you're going out to eat, you're spending your hard-earned money. It's like, I'm coming here because I want to have a nice time. It's like, I'm not spending $50 to, be stressed out the whole time. It's not worth it.
Now, in terms of just looking at taking that podcast to the next level, and we were talking about this before we started recording, have like restaurants reached out to you like to advertise or leverage your audience for anything locally? Because I've noticed that there's such a huge rise now of people getting more local, sponsors and stuff like that versus trying to go again unconventional route, because that's what podcasting is. Has that happened where a restaurant might be like, hey, this episode is brought to you by Pat's Chinese restaurant located at blah blah blah? Has that happened, or has that people approached you?
That has not happened yet for the restaurant angle. That is something that I am like working with my wife to figure out, and she's so good at helping me with that side of things.
Gotcha.
I will say though that actually, ironically, on Friday I had my first person reach out to me that wanted to advertise. It's the local gym that I go to.
Nice.
And the manager there listens to my podcast, and he likes it so much that he wants to advertise on the podcast. So
that's
I was like,
phenomenal. Congratulations.
Let's do it. I was like, yeah, let's go for it. That's great.
That's that, and I asked that because there's the glitz and the glamour of editing and getting your voice out there and being a voice, having people actually hang on your every word. But what people don't understand is that if you're doing this on the side and you're just doing it as a passion project, then hey, more power to you. But those people that want to, and this is part of why I do this show, just to show people like you can do that. Maybe you don't have to do the Audible live read or the right. Squarespace. You can niche down and go local.
Yeah, and like you referenced too, with what I'm doing is I'm going to so many local restaurants and local establishments that if I continue to build these relationships, that's something that could happen with it. What's also cool with doing this passion project is because it's with Uber, like I'm doing Uber Eats with it. The way I look at it is because right now I'm not getting paid or anything for doing this. It costs me money at this time because I'm putting my platform on different areas. Not that it's costing a lot of money, more than anything at the time. But I look at it like, you know what? Uber Eats, because I'm doing these runs, is paying for my podcast right now. So I'm like, you know what? Even though I'm not making money with it right now, at least I have the income coming in from Uber Eats. So it's kind of like all tying in together.
Well, you know what the funny thing is, and you can have fun with that too. You could just be like, hey, this show is brought to you by Uber Eats. Like you could kind of just play with that a little bit. Because again, like you just said, in a roundabout sort of way, that is what's happening.
I know, it's crazy. Like,
hell, you should reach out to them and see if they would be cool with that. That would be hilarious, man. If you could just be like, hey, this show is brought to you by Uber Eats, and then who knows, maybe they like the vibe, and you could say, give a promo code, and Basketball Drives is the promo code, and they could save like 5% off their order.
It's funny you bring up like the promo code thing. So this was another unintended consequence of this is if I didn't even know this would happen, but if I send the link out with my promo code and people sign up, I make a little income. So if you do like, hey, I send out my promo code, somebody ends up doing 50 deliveries because you can't just sign up and not do deliveries.
Right.
But if I give out my promo code, you do 50 deliveries, I end up making money. And I was like, I never really thought of this.
Yep. It's like affiliate. Yeah, affiliate link.
I was going to say somebody reached out to me and they said, hey, I like what you're doing. Do you have a promo code? I was like, do I have a promo code? Maybe. And then I looked and go, oh, I do. And then I said, wait a minute. Let me give out my promo code on my podcast. And now I'm like, I have people that have reached out to me and are using my promo code. So I do like right now I have like a fake commercial, but it's a real commercial on my podcast. And I just give out my promo code for anybody that wants to be an Uber Eats driver and help them out.
Hell yeah. See, that's what I'm talking about. And that's exactly the gem I was looking for. People, again, unconventional. It's like, hell, you didn't even know you had it. And then you're like, wait a minute, this is some extra money. And that's what I mean. Like just niching down.
Crazy. No, it's cool. And I always have worked hard, but I've never not worked and made money. And that was really, really nice. Like all I did, like somebody else is working right now. And I made money on this. That was cool. Like, I'm not going to lie. Like that was awesome. Yep. It felt really good.
Yeah. And the beauty of it is, and this is always the big pitch that I always tell people with podcasts. It's like, this stuff is evergreen. It lives on forever unless, you decide to delete the episode. But other than that, it lives on. You know, like somebody in another country may be learning about Uber Eats right now. You don't know.
Right.
And that's what people sometimes, it becomes like the hard sell where you got to tell a potential customer or an interviewer or a guest or whatever. And you got to say, listen, you know, whatever you say here may live on for 10, 20 years, just because if it's on a platform like iTunes, that obviously, knock on wood, it's not going anywhere. It's like somebody's going to be able to hear that message 5 years from now.
That's such a good point. And that's why it's like another thing my wife said. She was like, the one thing you have to do more than anything else is you have to be consistent. You have to make sure your podcast on Tuesday morning, because that's the day, it has to come out every Tuesday. Because the second you just stop it, you take 2 weeks here, 3 weeks there, people will go away. So be consistent, and that people will then come back. Because if someone finds it and likes it, and you have 27 episodes on there because you've been consistent, those downloads are going to continue to increase, even though those podcasts haven't been released in, you know, a month or two or whatever it might be.
Yep. I always tell my guys, you know, I'd always tell them on the network, et cetera. I'll tell them, like, listen, man, you know, if you're going to take 2 weeks off, you know, every week, just put out a brief message. Hey guys, you know, just a reminder, we're off for 2 weeks, but make sure you follow us here, or make sure you sign up for this email list, or make sure you do X, just because it's like people like that engagement. It's the same. It's the old gag of people like hearing their name, you know. It's the same thing. It's like people like being acknowledged and spoken to and respected. And I think that's, you know, especially like I said, with what you're doing, it's a 1-2 punch, because you're doing real life interactions, but you're also keeping those stories at the forefront mixed in with those interactions.
And I like to add on to that. That's why I like having, it's funny because like as a radio producer, my job is to put my host in the best spot possible to succeed. So it's kind of nice with those skill sets to be like, my job as a podcast producer / host is to put myself in the best position. 100%. And I just like the control of that, which is something I haven't had in a while. So it's like, as a producer, there's only so many things you can do, but when it's your time to go on air, it's your time to go on air. And with the podcast, like, I do it all. And I miss that. And I really like that control to be like, Mike, every Tuesday, this podcast will be out. You know, obviously stuff happens in life and who knows, but you know, I'm going to make sure I can do everything in my power that this will be out there for the consumer.
There you go. I think that's a great way to segue into the next part of the podcast, which is the hot seat. It's a series of rapid fire questions. You know, it could be relative to what you do, plus some other stuff as well. So we're gonna jump right into it. We're gonna start with a nice easy one. Favorite place to eat in Jersey?
Probably, I'll say, I like Aki Sushi.
Okay. And where are they?
They're in Bloomfield, New Jersey. It's the local sushi place down the road. We deliver from them all the time. It's just very solid. It comes real quick. It's not super expensive, but you know, it's like my comfort food place.
All right. So sushi's your vice, huh?
Oh yeah. I mean, I love it. I'll eat. The only thing I won't eat is eggs. I don't like eggs, but I'll eat anything else.
Nice. Now, living in Jersey all your life, how did you feel about the Nets moving to Brooklyn?
I was at first very hurt by it and saddened, but I think ultimately long-term for the health of the franchise, clearly it was the right thing to do. They're in a much better spot than they were. But I did feel a little hurt when they left. It was sad to see them go, but now they've become like a mainstream popular team. So I think it was the right thing ultimately. You know,
just as a side note, it bothers me so much because every team is named after the city. So it should, in theory, be the New York Nets. Like, it bothers me that they've made Brooklyn like its own city. At least for me, like, gotcha. I'm weird with that, you know, because it's like New York Mets, New York Yankees, New York Knicks. Right. It should be New York Nets. Like, it shouldn't be Brooklyn Nets. Like, it's so weird.
Yeah. No, that's interesting. I guess they wanted to brand themselves so differently and find that niche that was unique to them. And I'm happy about it because I don't hate sports teams. Like, I'm not like I'm a Mets fan, but I'm like, they're the Yankees, whatever.
Right.
Like, the Knicks are the one team that I like raises my blood pressure even thinking about them.
Well, you know, it's funny because, you know, like growing up, I was a diehard, you know, Bulls fan, you know, Michael Jordan all the way. Sure. But you know, it's like every great Jordan memory for me always ties to the Knicks. So it's always great. it's always hilarious. Like, man, dropping dropping 50 at the Garden, this and this and this. And
Sure.
even the Knicks had great memories. But the funny thing is, whenever I talk about basketball and how I used to be a huge fan, I always talk about the grittiness of the Knicks. I'm I'll always say something like, nobody's going to dive into the stands to grab a ball like Charles Oakley used to do, like, which is funny.
Oh yeah.
Because that's
no, I know. And that's like as a Nets fan growing up, they were like, for people that outside of the market or whatever listening, like, it's not like the Mets and Yankees where it's like kind of a split. Knicks were like, it's like 99 to 1%. So I would just have this inferiority complex where I just started to hate them so much that, you say Charles, like now I'm thinking of John Starks with that dunk making me want to vomit. And like now they had to like make like Patrick Ewing and his stupid 15-footer. Like,
but on the same token though, the Nets, nobody, and this is what I always joke about. Like sometimes I'll break somebody's chops on Facebook. I'm like, listen, man, you weren't watching the Nets when it was like Kenya Martin and Jason Kidd, and you know what I mean? Like you weren't.
No, yeah, that's fine. Well, it's funny you said, like, I so early in this podcast I followed a player that it was Kenyan. Like I found out where he lived. And
that's cool.
His house.
And
so sorry, Kenyan.
But no, I bring that up because again, it's such a strange thing, and you being in the sports market, I figured I'd bring that up. I'm like Brooklyn's not a city; it's a borough. It kind of devalues. It's like, are the Mets going to be the Queens Mets? You know what I mean? Like it just devalues everything.
I know, because like let's say the Nets and Knicks are playing each other, and you're in that game. You chant New York sucks, because then you're like, well, wait a minute, I'm in New York,
right?
So do I, like, what do you even say here?
Exactly. And then, of course, when Brooklyn moved over, everybody automatically became a Nets fan, because obviously, people that live in Brooklyn or represent Brooklyn, they go like the extra mile. They go hard with it. And I'm just like, listen, man, like it's a New York team. Like it's not, Brooklyn's not weird. Its own planet.
Right. Exactly.
There you go. Favorite piece of tech besides your phone and your computer?
My earbuds. My headphones.
Nice. Are they just regular earbuds that you have, or are they specialty ones?
They're OTM headphones. They were like $20 on Amazon. I could not. Those are like the one piece I need, because when I'm doing Uber Eats drives, they connect to my phone, so I'm listening to podcasts, listening to my GPS. I love these things. I would be like, I had a pair that fizzled out. Like I didn't have one for a week. I was like devastated. So I love these things.
Nice. Do you listen to music while you're driving, doing your shift?
I do. I listen to probably during the weekday a lot of music. On the weekends, sports radio to help me get caught up on stuff. But on the weekdays, I'm like, if all I've heard today is sports, I need something else. So I'll do a lot of. I like top 40 music. So nice. I listen to a lot of top 40. Who's
your favorite sports personality minus the guys you work with?
Ian Eagle.
Right.
I love Ian.
Now obviously we jump around and we talk a little bit about toys on here too. What was your favorite toy growing up?
It would be Lego, not Lego, Brio toy. It was like Brios, like these train tracks that went together, and Ghostbusters. Anything Ghostbusters toy related. If it was having backpack, having the figurines, but I would say the backpack, having it on with the gun was like the coolest thing.
Oh yeah, it's funny because there's a out here there's like a cosplay troupe that does Ghostbuster stuff, and like to see like people and like to see like somebody built like a full big functioning proton pack. It just trips me out so much. God.
That is crazy.
Yeah, they
How about that?
Yeah, I think they are called the New York Ghostbusters, and then what they did was they took one of the Subaru station wagons and painted it up like Ecto 1.
Oh my god.
Yeah, it's pretty.
Wow, I'll have to check that out.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome. Like when they do like cons out here or cons in Long Island, like they'll pull up, they'll have they'll park it outside and they'll take photos and stuff. So it's pretty cool. But yeah, seeing like a first
full on Ghostbusters, the best.
Absolutely. The like I said, seeing like a full on proton pack that somebody built, I'm like, this is so great.
Oh my goodness! How much time goes into doing something like that? Must be wild.
Man, it's insane.
Yeah.
So the next part, we got a few more to wrap up.
Sure.
What's something that you've purchased recently that's less than $100 that's made your life either more easier or more enjoyable?
Ooh, less than $100. Definitely those headbuds I referenced. Those were $20. I would have to say probably these slip-on shoes I like, these Skechers. They've just from doing the driving and they're comfortable and they've kind of made bopping from restaurant to restaurant, driving around easier. So I would say my comfortable shoes have helped.
All right. Last one. What's your long-term goal with the podcast? Where would you like to be if I reached out to you a year from now?
I would like to be on a network. I mean, that's probably a year from now. That might be tough, but I'd like to kiss. You know what? I'll keep it more simple. I just want to continue to grind and have people keep listening to it, liking it, enjoying it, and getting it just more notoriety and building to where I ultimately want it to be, where it is a podcast that is recognized nationally and is one that people are downloading and enjoying. That would be the ultimate goal with that. But for now, for a year, just continue to build it up and have people listening to it.
All right. Okay. And the last one, which is what we like to call Reach One, Teach One. We like to give people something actionable to close things out. If somebody's looking to start a podcast or even get into, delivering for Uber Eats, what's one piece of advice you'd give them?
For doing a podcast, I would say, as I mentioned before, a consistency, making sure that you're always doing it and make sure that it's about something you're passionate about and really like. Like I said before, I always wanted to do a podcast, but I didn't know what, and I needed to find that voice. So if there's something that you feel passionate about, go for it. I say do it, and be all in. Don't do an episode, wait for, so find your passion, what that might be, and just go for it and don't care what people think, what people say. Be all in on it.
Nice. And if somebody wanted to start working with Uber Eats, what do you think? Should be something?
Of course, you can find my promo code if you want to do that. That's super easy as well. And I would say just it's not that tough to do. The hardest part of it is I would say just once you get locked into Uber Eats, you do it. Obviously you need a car and all that stuff, but just smile to people. Like when you drop off food for them, just smile and make sure that you're polite, and the rest will take care of itself.
A hello goes a long way.
It does. Like, hey, hi, Josh. I hope how's everything? Here you go. It's crazy, but little things like that help, and especially when tips are such a major part of Uber Eats, it's okay to be nice.
There you go. All right. Well, with that, I think that's a great way to wrap things up. If people wanted to find out about your show and keep up with you on social, where could they find you?
Absolutely. So it's Basketball Drives with Mike Bisceglia. I'm pretty active on Twitter, which is Mike bballdrives. Also my Facebook page, Basketball Drives with Mike Bisceglia. And on there, I've taught myself how to do some cool little videos that I make, little montages of things from the road. So there you get snippets of my stories. You also get the full episodes of the podcast, and all the content is there. So it's free and available for everybody to listen to my wild stories from the road and me chasing down former NBA stars.
And with that, Mike, I want to thank you for sharing the toys and tech of your trade.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me on. That was a lot of fun.
That wraps up our interview with Mike Bisceglia. To find out more about Mike Bisceglia and his podcast, Basketball Drives with Mike Bisceglia, make sure to check out the show notes for this episode, as we will have links to keep up with the show, subscribe to the podcast, and also keep up with Mike as well. One thing I do want to say before we wrap up, this show is proof positive that you don't need a fancy studio space. You don't need a microphone that costs hundreds of dollars to create your content, share your voice with the masses, and just get your brand out there. All you need is, in the words of Jimbo Slice, 2 hands and a heartbeat, and definitely Mike embodies that. So again, if you're on the fence, want to launch a podcast, want to get into a side gig, just go out there and do it. Even if you stumble or you fail or whatever the case it may be, don't look at it as failure. Just look at it as a lesson. We'll be back with a brand new episode of Toys and Tech of the Trade in 2 weeks. If you're interested in being a guest on a future episode, you can email me, rich@rageworks.net, or you can use the contact form on the site, whether it's on the Rageworks site or on the podcast network site. As always, we're back to the new, we're back to our old, I should say, release schedule bi-weekly every Wednesday. And you can find us on your podcast platform of choice. No need to list them all out. And with regards to social media, you can find us pretty much on any social media platform. Just look up RageWorks or some combination thereof, and links to our social will be in the show notes for this episode. Thank you guys for checking it out. We'll see you guys in 2 weeks. Peace.